Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to break down the Week 5 Monday Night Football Showdown slate on Draftkings. We were supposed to have two games for Monday night. We were supposed to have another doubleheader. The Patriots and Broncos game got rescheduled to Monday night due to COVID concerns, and then they had to postpone the game again, which kind of sucks. I was actually, looking forward to having another two-game slate. I've said it before, I do prefer to play the two-game slates rather than Showdown, but, we got big tournaments for this Showdown slate. DraftKings just continue to running out huge tournaments for these primetime games. I think this one, we got like a $10 contest with like 1.5 million in total prizes, something like that. So huge tournaments out there for this Chargers-Saints game. We're going to break down this Showdown slate like we always do. We'll start off at the top of the player pool, and we'll work our way down. I'll hit on all the playable options, all the guys that I have interest in on this Showdown slate. Just the guys that I think I should have or I'll have in my player pool. But before we do get started, as always, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button down below. If you are new to the channel here, be sure to click that subscribe button as well. I am uploading a ton of NFL content right now, so I would appreciate it if you would subscribe, and be sure to click the notification bell as well, so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. I am uploading, almost every single day in terms of NFL content, trying to get up NFL videos just as much as I can. There is a game Tuesday night. We do have the, I think it's the Bills. I can't remember who the Bills are playing, but I know there is a game on Tuesday night. I'm sure there's going to be a Showdown slate for that, so I will have a video up for, Tuesday night's game as well. But let's go ahead and take a look at the top of the player pool. We'll start off at the top here. So we got Alvin Kamara as our most expensive option on DraftKings. He is $12K. If you want to play him in the captain, he is $18K. Obviously, very expensive, but for good reason. Kamara just been so good this season. He's pretty much been like the #1 fantasy running back so far, at least like PPR wise. 23, 38, 47, 20 DK points through 4 games. Had his worst game of the season last week, and he still gave you over 20 DraftKings points. I mean, Kamara just has such a high floor right now, especially with Michael Thomas out. Thomas has already been ruled out for this game, which just should solidify a heavy workload for Kamara, especially in the passing game. His carries, they're going to vary from game to game depending on game script. If the Saints get behind, which I don't think will be the case here, but if they are playing from behind, you might not see Kamara get close to the 20 carries that he got last game, but you can still pencil him in for like 10 to 12 carries most weeks. We know he gets elite usage in the passing game. I mean, he's pretty much a wide receiver, going to get close to double-digit targets. 4 targets last week, that was definitely, a bit of an outlier, or a bit of a, I guess, outlier. Like, that's not going to happen. He's going to get more than 4 targets. Like, we shouldn't be too worried about that. Kamara, elite play here, I think. If you can pay up for him, he is clearly the top option on this slate. He projects the highest. In my opinion, I would say he projects better than the quarterbacks. I really like Kamara. I'm going to be trying to fit him into as many lineups as I can. I think it's very likely that you see him in the winning lineup, whether that's in the flex or at captain. He's going to be a guy that you want to get exposure to. Just gets so much usage, like going to get so much volume with how much he's involved in the passing game. I mean, that just makes him an elite play on DraftKings with it being, full PPR scoring. So love Kamara, really hard not to. He's clearly one of the top plays here. And then you have the 2 quarterbacks. You got Drew Brees at 10-4, Justin Herbert at 10-2. So I do have interest in both quarterbacks. I think it all comes down to, how I build out my lineup, who I'm playing at captain. I like to correlate my lineups to where if I'm playing a pass catcher at captain, I normally like to pair the quarterback with that pass catcher. So that'll probably be how I determine which quarterback I play. Like, say I'm playing Keenan Allen at captain, then I probably want to get Justin Herbert into those lineups. Say I'm playing, Tre'Quan Smith at captain, then I probably want to get Drew Brees in those lineups. But I think, trying to fit in both quarterbacks makes plenty of sense. Normally, you're going to see at least one of the 2 quarterbacks be in the winning lineup. It is very unlikely that you'll have scenarios where neither quarterback's in the winning lineup. That just really doesn't happen. Quarterbacks just, they project close to the top in terms of, raw fantasy points, in terms of all players. I think the quarterbacks are only behind Kamara in terms of projection for this slate. So really like both quarterbacks, really have interest in both. I think if I can only pick one, I guess it's really close for me. I think I get a little bit more upside out of Justin Herbert. I like what I've seen so far from Justin Herbert in his 3 starts against KC, Carolina, and Tampa Bay. 26, 19, and 24 DraftKings points. 290 passing yards, 330, 311 passing yards, does give you some upside in terms of rushing ability. You know, he's 14 rushing yards, 15 rushing yards, 18 rushing yards. Like, there is at least some rushing potential for him. At 10-2, I really like the price on Herbert. I think I do slightly lean him over Drew Brees, but hard to not like Drew Brees here either. You know, Brees got off to a really slow start, but bounced back in week 3 against Green Bay at home, 23 DK points. You know, he's back at home here. Drew Brees has always, had better home splits. He's always played much better at home than on the road. In these, New Orleans games, like these Superdome games, they always tend to be shootouts. This is another game that does have a high total. Opened at 52, been bet down to 50 cents, but 50 is still a pretty high total. Saints are 7-point favorites. I think that's another thing. Game script is probably going to lean more towards the Chargers playing from behind. The Chargers are going to be forced to throw. So I guess that's why I would slightly lean Herbert over Brees, but I really like both quarterbacks. I think playing both, if you can make it work, does make plenty of sense. I do have interest in both guys. Then you have Keenan Allen at 9,400. I really like Keenan Allen as well, man. Like, it's really hard not to like Keenan Allen right now. Since Justin Herbert's taken over at quarterback, like, that has really helped Keenan Allen. We've seen his targets, go through the roof. Double-digit targets in 3 straight games. 10 against KC, 19 against Carolina, 11 against Tampa Bay. Been productive as well with 16, 34, 14 Draftkings points. Like, Keenan Allen's starting to look like the guy that we saw last year when he was with Phillip Rivers, like just getting massive volume, double-digit targets pretty much every week. I think, I don't know if he'll see Lattimore, like if Lattimore will shadow him or not. I don't really look too much into quarterback matchups. I think Keenan Allen plays out of the slot, though, so I don't know if Lattimore really goes to the slot. I'm not too worried about matchup, though. I mean, matchup, who really cares? It's a freaking showdown slate. Like, Keenan Allen, he's going to be a good play regardless. I do have a good amount of interest in him at 9,400. I think, he makes a ton of sense as a captain play, gives you a lot of upside. We've seen that he can go out there and put up, 25, 30 Draftkings points, can go for over 100 yards, multiple touchdowns, going to get massive volume, have a good amount of interest in him. But then we get to a couple guys I don't have much interest in, like Joshua Kelly, 8,200. With Austin Eckler, out for this game, obviously that is a big boost for Josh Kelly, but he is priced up. He is 8,200. Like, that is a pretty hefty price tag to pay for Kelly, and I don't expect him to just get massive volume. I think they are going to involve Justin Jackson. I think you're going to see a pretty even split between Kelly and Jackson. It might lean 60-40 Kelly's way. I would rather play Jackson, though. Like, Jackson's way cheaper. He's almost $4,000 less than Kelly. Look, you could go to Kelly. He's going to be the starter. He's going to be the number one, but I do expect Justin Jackson to be involved. I don't think Kelly's going to get like 25 touches, which maybe is what some people expect. I don't think that's going to be the case. I expect, you see a pretty even split between him and Jackson. They honestly might ride the hot hand. If Kelly's struggling out of the gate and Jackson comes off the bench, comes on the field, he's playing really well, being really efficient with his carries, just doing his job, then we could see a scenario where you see them ride the hot hand. Maybe they lean on Justin Jackson a little bit more. So for that reason, I think I would rather play Jackson for a lot cheaper. We'll talk about him, when we get down there. Hunter Henry at 7,800, kind of another guy that I'm not too big of a fan of. His target volume's pretty secure in this offense. He's going to get, anywhere from 6 to 8 targets. I don't know if he has like that massive upside, though, especially, on a showdown slate. I'm looking for upside. If Hunter Henry goes out there and puts up 15 Draftkings points, are you going to need him to win? Probably not. I think you just get more upside from other guys. Like, if I can find the salary, I would much rather play Keenan Allen. Honestly, I think I'd rather save salary and play, some of these Saints receivers. Like, you have Traquan Smith for $7K. Manny Sanders is really cheap. He's $5,600. I really, really like him. We'll talk about him in a second. So, not the biggest fan of Hunter Henry at $7,800. Traquan Smith, I do like here at $7K. His price is a little bit hefty. Just straight up, we'll talk about Manny Sanders in a second. I think I do prefer Sanders over Smith because, Sanders is almost $2,000 less. But with Michael Thomas still out, that is obviously a boost for Traquan Smith. We've seen him play pretty well these last 3 games without Michael Thomas. 7 targets, 6 targets, 4 targets, 13 DK points, 8, 21 DK points. Obviously ran really good with the touchdowns last week. I mean, he only caught 4 passes last week, and 2 of them were for touchdowns. Obviously, that's not going to happen every week, but Traquan Smith is clearly going to be involved in this offense when Michael Thomas is off the field, and that's going to be the case this week. Thomas is going to be out, so I do have interest in Traquan Smith. Like I said earlier, though, I think I prefer Manny Sanders for cheaper, and we'll talk about him in a second. Jared Cook is an injury we'll need to watch. He is questionable heading into this game. He did participate in practice. It was a limited practice, I believe. So normally when guys at least participate, even in limited fashion, I normally assume that they're going to play. So I'm just going to assume that Jared Cook plays. If he's out, though, we'll talk about some of the guys that would benefit if he were to be out. But assuming he does play, you could obviously go to Jared Cook. I think he does benefit with Michael Thomas out. Hasn't really done much with Thomas out, though, just the last 2 games. 5 targets against the Raiders, 3 targets against Green Bay. He didn't play last week, so obviously, he's only played the last 2 games without Thomas. At 6,200, I'm not the biggest fan of Jared Cook. I think he's in play. I don't think he's like a full fade by any means, but I really like Manny Sanders. I think he's my favorite, Saints pass catcher. If you're not going to include like Alvin Kamara, he's definitely my favorite Saints pass catcher to go to. I think 5,600 is just a little bit too cheap for Manny Sanders. He didn't have the best game week 2 against the Raiders when Thomas was out, but he has bounced back the last 2 weeks. He's looked pretty good without Thomas. 15 DK points in both games. Got 5 targets week 3 against Green Bay, 9 targets last week against the Lions. Like, he is, in my opinion, he's the number 1 receiver whenever Thomas is out. Obviously you could say that Kamara is the number 1 receiver because technically he's a receiver. I mean, he gets like double-digit targets. But just talking like, Sanders, Cook, Traquan Smith, between those 3 guys, I think Sanders is the number 1 when Thomas is not on the field. Got 9 targets last week. I would expect close to similar volume here this week. 5,600 I just think is too cheap. When Cook's $600 more, when Traquan Smith is $1,400 more, like, I don't think those guys are worth the extra salary. I would just rather play Manny Sanders. I really like Manny Sanders at his price tag. I think he makes a lot of sense as a captain play. I think he does give us some upside, and he is very affordable. If you play Sanders at captain, you can kind of play whoever you want. Like, you could probably play both quarterbacks. You could probably still get in Alvin Kamara into that build as well. We will talk about a lineup build, or we'll look at some lineup builds that I like. We'll try and build out a lineup with Sanders at captain just to see how it works. But really, really like Manny Sanders. I think he is one of the better plays on this Showdown slate. Just looks a little bit too cheap in my opinion. Another injury we'll have to watch, Mike Williams. He is questionable heading into this game. Another guy that practiced in limited fashion, so I am going to assume that he plays. Last week he was out, and we saw both. I can't remember their names. Like, I don't really even know these guys. One of them is Jalen Guyton. Never heard of this guy, but he had a very long touchdown. He only caught 1 pass, but it was like a 70-yard touchdown. And then Tyron Johnson also caught a really long touchdown, like a 50-yarder. Those were their only catches for the games, but both guys, benefited obviously with Mike Williams out. If Mike Williams plays, I do have some interest in him at 5K. Mike Williams is a high upside guy. I know he hasn't shown much so far this season. Coming in with an injury designation is a little bit worrisome. Like we saw last primetime game it was, I think last Monday night, Julio came into the game questionable, ultimately wound up playing, but then he re-aggravated his hamstring. There's obviously some concerns there, but at 5K, I do have some interest in Mike Williams if he's able to go here and if he's like not limited or anything. I definitely feel safer with Manny Sanders, and straight up, I would much rather play Manny Sanders. But Mike Williams is fine. If I build out my lineup and I have 5K left, I'm fine plugging in Mike Williams into that build. I wouldn't try and, reconstruct my lineup to get elsewhere unless I can find a way to get up to Sanders, but probably would already have Sanders in there because I think Sanders, right now, he's one of my favorite plays on this Showdown slate. But then you have the backups, or if you want to call them backups, the backup running backs. You got Latavius Murray at 4,800. You got Justin Jackson at 4,400. So Latavius Murray, the last 2 weeks, he has definitely been involved, especially through the ground game. 12 carries against Green Bay, 14 carries against Detroit. Doesn't get a ton of work in the passing game. Like, you're not going to see Latavius Murray get 6-7 targets. Like, that's just not going to be the case. They're going to involve Alvin Kamara a ton in the passing game. But they will use Latavius Murray in the running game. They'll give him close to double-digit carries. Last 2 weeks, he's got 12 and 14. I think projecting him for like 10 to 12 carries, I think that's a pretty reasonable projection here, maybe 1 to 2 targets. At 4,800, I think he's fine to go to, but I'm not the biggest fan of Murray. I think I would rather play Justin Jackson, who we'll talk about in a second. Murray definitely ran good last week, getting 2 touchdowns. I think both of them came at the goal line as well. It was kind of weird to see Murray punching in those touchdowns and not Alvin Kamara, because usually when they get down to the goal line, like, Kamara is still going to be punching it in. I probably won't be on Murray personally. I think you're definitely going to need him to, get a touchdown, maybe even 2 touchdowns to be like a really good play. More times than not, he does have a pretty low floor, like 12 carries for 60 yards and 1 catch for 10 yards. Like that's easily in his range of outcomes. Like that's probably what I would expect him to do here, give you 7 to 8 DK points. I think you get more upside from Justin Jackson. I think Justin Jackson definitely has a path to getting more touches, whereas obviously Latavius Murray is clearly behind Alvin Kamara. Justin Jackson, I could see him, if he comes out here and plays really, really well, like we could see a scenario where he out-touches Joshua Kelly. We obviously know Justin Jackson was heavily involved last year. Him and Austin Eckler were a pretty dynamic duo last season. Jackson hasn't been too involved this year because of how well Joshua Kelly has played. But now with Eckler out, it is clearly going to be Kelly and Jackson as the two, lead guys in this backfield. I expect those guys to split the carries pretty evenly. I think maybe Kelly sees a few more carries, but it could really go either way. We could see a hot hand scenario like I talked about earlier, where if one guy comes out and plays really, really well, we could see them, get more touches. Kelly, though, he's shown upside, or Jackson, though, he's shown upside in the past when he gets touches. He can catch balls out of the backfield. They will involve him in the passing game. At 4,400, I actually like him quite a bit. I think he's a really good value play. I think he's one of the better values, like under 6K. Him and Manny Sanders are the two guys I like a good amount. You have the kickers that you could play. I'm not the biggest fan of playing kickers. I don't think kickers give you much upside, but they're always fine to go to. You could go there. Defenses as well, but I don't think this is a slate where I really want to play the defenses. Probably the kickers would be it for me. I don't see myself playing either defense. I do want to talk about Jalen Guyton. So he is 4,200. Only caught one pass last week with Mike Williams out, but it was a 72-yard touchdown. So obviously, it looks like he had a really good game. Didn't get the volume though, but he did play a ton. I'm pretty sure he played over 70% of the snaps with Mike Williams out. So this will be dependent on Mike Williams' status. We'll have actives and inactives released around 7 o'clock Eastern time, so we'll know plenty of time beforehand if Mike Williams is in or out. If Mike Williams does not play, I think Guyton makes plenty of sense as a value option. I think I do prefer Justin Jackson. I prefer Manny Sanders. But if Williams doesn't play, Guyton will definitely be in my player pool and a guy I will look to get some exposure to. Obviously, if Mike Williams plays, though, I really have no interest in Guyton because then, he's just not going to see the field as much, not going to be targeted as much. So that'll be dependent on Mike Williams' status. The kickers we talked about are fine to go to. I don't really have any special analysis to give you about a kickers. Just play whatever one fits. Normally I wouldn't play both kickers. I think just playing one is the way to go. I would try and get up to Justin Jackson, though. I think Jackson just gives you more upside. Like if there's a guy, like if there's guys down here under 6K that can give you 15 to 20, it's Manny Sanders, it's Mike Williams, I guess Latavius Murray. Like these are the guys that can actually give you a ceiling, whereas kickers, their ceiling, it's pretty much like 15 fantasy points. Like you're rarely going to see kickers score more than that. So that's just my thoughts there on the kickers. Talked about the defenses. I don't have too much interest in either defense. I guess you could go to Tyron Johnson if Mike Williams is out, but again, he only had one target last week. It was a long 53-yard touchdown, so it looks like he had a really good game. It looks like he played really well without Williams, but his snaps were a lot lower compared to Guyton. So I think Guyton is the much safer option. Probably his volume is more secure as well. This is all dependent on if Mike Williams plays, though. If Mike Williams plays, obviously neither guy I will be considering. I'll probably be off both guys. Taysom Hill, you can do what you want with Taysom Hill. Like he hasn't really been involved too much this year. He did get a touchdown in week 1, or he didn't get a touchdown week 1, but he did have a 38-yard pass, and he also had 3 carries for 13 yards. Look, they'll do whatever they will with Taysom Hill. They'll involve him in runs. They'll occasionally let him throw a pass or two. He's always someone you could play on a showdown slate, but don't really feel like I really want to go there. If he winds up in the winning lineup, then so be it. But I'll probably be off Taysom Hill. I probably won't be going there. I really don't see myself going to pair him, even though he did catch a touchdown last week. Hunter Henry is clearly the number 1 tight end on this Chargers team, so there's really no one else I want to go to under Johnson. I guess you could consider Adam Trotman, depending on if Jared Cook is out. If Jared Cook's out, Trotman will be the starter. Last week, though, with Cook out, he put up a complete donut. He didn't catch a ball at all. I mean, he was on the field a good amount. I'm pretty sure he was, at least, but didn't really do much. I mean, he'd be playable if Cook was out, but still, I wouldn't have too much confidence in him. Really, there's not many guys under here, under 2K I want to go to. So once he gets patched, like Johnson, I think is viable if Mike Williams is out. But other than that, there's really no one else that I want to play. So let's take a look at roster construction real quick just before we end the video. We'll take a look at a few roster builds. I think I want to try and build up one lineup with maybe Alvin Kamara at captain, try and pay up, and then maybe we'll do a lineup where we go cheap with a guy like Manny Sanders at captain, who we talked about earlier. I like a lot. So paying up for Kamara at captain at 18K is obviously very expensive. You're going to be thinned out on salary, but we talked about some value plays I like. We'll hit on in a second. Once you do plug in Kamara, though, you're left with 6,400 remaining per player. I'll go ahead and plug in Manny Sanders. I mean, Manny Sanders is a guy I really like here. I'm just going to go ahead and plug him into this build at 5,600. Normally, I want to get at least one of the two quarterbacks in. I think since we went with Kamara at captain, you could definitely play Drew Brees with Kamara, because obviously Kamara can catch touchdowns. He's going to be involved in the passing game. Normally, I would like to, or normally if I'm playing a running back at captain, I want to pair the quarterback from the opposing team. But this is a scenario where Kamara is just so involved in the passing game that you can definitely play him at captain and play Drew Brees as well. I think I'll just go with Herbert for now, though. I do slightly prefer Herbert just straight up over Brees. I think both guys are obviously in play, though. But once we go with Herbert, getting our quarterback in there, we got 5,400 left for 3 spots. So we're going to have to find some value. I mean, we could definitely play Mike Williams. We'll go ahead and plug in Justin Jackson because, I talked about it earlier. I really like Justin Jackson here. I think there is upside for him, especially if he comes out and plays really well. There's going to be the opportunity for him to earn extra touches, for him to outplay Joshua Kelly. So at 4,400, once we plug him in, now we're left with 5,900 remaining per player for our last 2 spots. So a lot of ways we could go here. Assuming Mike Williams plays, we could plug him in at 5K, and then that would leave us enough to play Jared Cook, who we could plug in there as well, assuming he plays. We could drop down from Mike Williams to maybe Guyton. If you assume if Williams is out, then we could play Guyton at 4,200, and that would leave us enough to play, Traquan Smith. Or we could play one of the 2 kickers. You do that leaves you enough to play Hunter Henry. I think personally these last 2 spots, I would probably go with Mike Williams if he's active and he's not limited. I would plug him in there at 5K, and then you can play Jared Cook at 6,200. I know Jared Cook hasn't done much these last 2 weeks, but without Thomas, I think that is a boost for Jared Cook. I do expect him to be involved to get looks, especially in the red zone. They will definitely get Jared Cook looks in the red zone. Seems like this guy's always finding the end zone somehow. I'm surprised he's only scored 1 touchdown so far this season. He was a touchdown machine last year. I do like Cook at 6,200, assuming he's able to play here. So this is a lineup build that you can do. Obviously, you can pay up for Kamara pretty easily. You can definitely make it work. You're going to have to play a few cheap guys, but we talked about, Sanders I like for cheap. Justin Jackson I like for cheap. If Mike Williams plays, you can definitely use him at 5K. Jared Cook is fine as well at 6,200. But that's a lineup that I like with Kamara. Now let's look at a lineup build with going cheap at captain. We talked about Manny Sanders. I think he gives us upside and definitely is captain worthy at 8,400. If you do plug him in at captain, then you're obviously going to want to correlate your lineups the correct way. You're probably going to want to play Drew Brees in those lineups, just because if you're assuming Sanders has a big game, it is very likely that Drew Brees is the reason why, or Drew Brees is contributing to that. So once we plug in Brees, we got 10-4 left. We got a lot of ways we can go here. We can definitely just jam in Kamara and Herbert, really just get in both quarterbacks, get in all the studs. If we do that, we are left with 4,500 remaining per player. So we could plug in Mike Williams, and that would leave us enough to play one of the 2 kickers. We could plug in Justin Jackson, who I talked about earlier I really like. That would leave us enough to play Guyton. I would probably rather go that route. Obviously, though, you're only playing Guyton if Mike Williams is out. If Mike Williams plays, then we could take out Jackson and Guyton, and then we could put Mike Williams in there and then put one of the 2 kickers in. Again, I really have no preference with the kickers. Usually I try and pick the kicker that I think the team scores more points. Right now, the Saints have the higher team total, 28.5 total. So I would probably just go with the Saints kicker, but it doesn't really matter. That's a lineup build that I do like a lot, though. With Sanders in at captain, I think Sanders is definitely captain worthy. Him and Kamara are probably going to be my 2 highest owned captains on this Showdown slate. Normally, I like to play running backs and receivers at captain. Rarely do you see quarterbacks be in the winning captain spot unless they just put up a massive game, which, you're more likely to get 25-30 from a pass catcher than one of these 2 quarterbacks. If Russell Wilson was on this slate, or a Patrick Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson, you could play those guys at quarterback because they have massive upside. But, I don't think, at this point, Drew Brees is putting up, any 30, 35-point games. Herbert either. So I would probably stick to guys like, Sanders, Kamara, Keenan Allen, maybe Traquan Smith. These are the guys I'd be playing at captain on this slate. But yeah, guys, that's just kind of how I'm looking to approach roster construction here. Definitely think I'm jamming in Kamara, whether that's at captain or in the flex. I want to get Kamara in my lineups. I want one of the two quarterbacks in every lineup, whether that's Breeze or Herbert. Really doesn't matter. Just comes down to how you correlate your lineup. If you play a Saints pass catcher at captain, you probably want to get Breeze in there. If you play a Chargers pass catcher at captain, then you probably want to get Herbert in there. We talked about some values I like. Manny Sanders, really like him. I think he's one of my favorite plays overall. Justin Jackson, I like a lot for cheap. I think, if Mike Williams plays, he makes a lot of sense at 5K. If he's out, Guyton for 4,200, Johnson for 1,800 make plenty of sense as well. But yeah, guys, I think we covered it all. Broke down the player pool, talked about roster construction, broke everything down for Monday night's game. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I really do appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed, hit that like button before you do get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you want to get more content from me, I do have more content available on Patreon. That is linked down below in the description. If you do really enjoy these YouTube videos and if they help you out a lot and you want to get more content from me, you can check out what I have available on Patreon, linked down below in the description. But best of luck on this slate, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We'll see you in the next one, guys. Good luck tonight. Peace.